Hi guys, and welcome to another video. Today we are going to be continuing with our NBT Maths preparation. For those of you who are doing Maths Lit, this is an important video for you because I have done some of these questions before on my main channel, which is Smart Prep, which is, I'll put a link to that in the description and in the comments. Now, those questions were answered, but I found a lot of people replied to say that they're doing maths and they're not understanding what's going on. So if you're doing pure maths, you may understand some of these questions and want to just skip to the next question if you find that I'm going a bit long. But for those of you who are doing Maths Lit, what I want to do is I want to try and bridge that gap between pure maths and Maths Lit so that you're able to answer these slightly trickier questions. So I don't necessarily want you to understand the underlying fundamentals. All I want you to do is know the tricks. So I'm going to show you little tricks to get through these questions and literally just answer the questions without having to have too much of an understanding. So the good news for you guys is that a lot of these questions, you'll see the comments in the Smart Prep video, a lot of these questions are exactly the same as what you're going to be getting in the exam. So if you do as many of these questions, I'll put a link to the past papers on our website and all that stuff. And if you do as many of those questions, you will be absolutely fine for the exam. So don't stress, we got you covered for your NBT Maths exam. Now let's get to it. Okay. Right. So the first question says, find the products of the roots of the equation x squared minus 4x plus 1. So for those of you who really want to understand what's going on, they want to work it out and all that stuff, go over to Smart Prep. Those answers will be there. For those of you who just want to get the tip, the trick to make it easy for yourself, all you do is, if you want the product of the roots of the equation, the answer is just that. Okay. Simple as that. And then I have a 5-minute explanation on why that's true. But for those of you who just want to pass that exam, there we go. Easy. When you want the product of the roots of the equation, you get plus 1. I'll just show that for the curious people doing pure maths. Maybe I should. What are the roots of here? The roots will be -1 and 2, right? And what's -1 times 2? -2, right? And if I times this out, I get x squared minus x minus 2, right? So do you see the -2 is the product of those two roots? -1 and -2 gives you -1 times 2 gives you -2. Okay, so brief explanation. Okay. So I am going to just write a note, because what I'm going to do is upload this memo to the Smart Prep website. So you don't have to watch all the videos. You can simply just get the memo. I'll put a link into that as well. You'll get all the past papers, all the memos, everything that you need. Please just like and subscribe to the channel. And that will be so helpful. And comment. Okay. I'd really like to know from you guys. This is the product of the roots. I'd really like to know from you guys, are you doing Maths Lit or pure maths? Because I'm curious to know how many people writing the NBTs are doing pure versus Maths Lit, and also how many people watching these videos are Maths Lit versus pure maths. This is the product of the roots. Okay, so nice and quick. This looks like a repeated question, same as before. So that'll just be 1. Those are indeed, that's just a duplicate. Sometimes that happens. Okay, so now we are doing this question. Solve the inequality for this one. Okay, so what I want to do is just talk about what that means. This means if it's wanting to eat the 0, if you'd rather eat nothing, then this must be really small. So what we're saying is this has to be negative or equal to 0. Okay. Negative or equal to 0 because of that equal sign. So this whole thing has to be negative. So what I want to do is just go through each of these terms and quickly just tell you whether they're positive or negative. 3 to the x, okay, is always going to be positive. Okay, so this is always going to be positive. There's an explanation for this in the other video if you want all that stuff. I'm just showing you the tricks. Anytime you see an x in the exponent, that means this whole thing is positive. It can never be negative. If you see something squared, that's always going to be positive. Okay. So here we have, this is positive. Okay. Let's do a different color. So anytime something is squared, because -2 times -2, it comes out to positive. So this thing I'm doing in orange, because there's a square, you must know that that is always positive. Okay. This is always positive. Okay. Now, because this is -2, negative or positive, actually this whole thing ends up being negative. Okay. So this whole thing ends up being negative. So this bracket. So what we're dealing with is each thing. So that is now negative. All right. Well, in order to have a negative, what you need to do is you need to have things being positive, because you'd have to, for this to stay negative, a positive times a negative gives you positive, it gives you a negative. Negative times negative is a positive. Okay, so because this bottom is positive and this thing here is negative, we need this thing for this to stay negative to be positive. And so all we do now is we say that, right, this has to be positive. Okay. All right, so let's just do that in a different color. So this must be positive. Okay. Okay, if I've lost you maths lit guys, and pure maths, people might be lost as well. As I say, just maybe rewind and watch again. Or if you're in a rush, go through the questions and maybe just learn some of the answers. I know it's not ideal, but if you're writing tomorrow, you gotta do well. You gotta just do what you have to do. All right, so x squared minus 4 must be positive. Okay, so what we have here then is this must be, for this to be positive, x squared. Okay, so let's do, so we want x squared to be positive. X squared minus 4. Okay, so this is going to give us our critical values. Okay, so our critical values. So what we do now is we do our critical values. So in other words, we want to find out when is it going to be, oh, it can also be 0. So the first thing is x can equal 0. These are called critical values. X squared minus 4 can equal 0, right? And that means that, well, I'm going to not factorize, I'm going to do it the quicker way. I'm going to take the 4 across, square root both sides, and we get plus or minus 2. And now all we do is we test on a number line our critical values, and we see, are we going to get a plus or are we going to get a minus? Okay, when we put these various things in. Okay, so we know at that point we're going to get -2, 0, and 2. And so what we do is we test in between these values. Okay, now let's say that we have, like, say, -4. Let's make it -10. That's an easier one to work with. Okay, so -10 will be -10 times, and then this will be -10 times 10, which will be 100. 100 squared, sorry, -10 squared will be 100 minus. So what happens is that ends up being positive. And because this is -10, that's negative. And that is indeed negative, because negative times positive is negative. So that doesn't work, because this must be positive. So we'll put a cross line. That does not work there. Okay. Let's try -1. Well, -1 will be a negative there, but then this will be 1 minus 4, and that'll be a negative there. Okay, and so negative times negative will be positive. So that is correct. That's positive, and we want it to be positive. Okay. 0 will be 0 times, it'll end up being 0, so we're allowed 0, so that's fine. Let's try 1. 1 times a negative, that gives us a negative, but we want it to be positive. So that does not work, and I'm pretty sure it'll work outside there, so it doesn't work there. Okay. And let's try over here. We'll try 10. We'll get 10 squared. 10 times 10, that'll be positive, so it will indeed work out there. So between -2 and 0, and then from 2 to infinity. So -2 to 0 and 2 all the way to infinity. Okay, so that would be this one here, D. Okay. Now, I do not like that they put a square bracket here, because you cannot touch infinity, but there is no other option. So it's got to be that one. Okay. Okay, now they want the sum of all of the values here up until P. Okay, where n is 1. So what does that mean? For the guys doing Maths Lit, the 2n minus 1, this is a rule. Okay, and pure maths, actually, they're not that easy. So what you do is you put the n into there, and you start with 1. So you replace n with a 1. Minus 1, and your first term is 2 minus 1 is 1. What this weird symbol here means is the sum of. So what this in English means, the sum of all of the terms, starting with n being 1 and ending with being P. Okay, and so what we would do is we would then, the next term would be 2, right? So 2 times 2 is 4 minus 1 is 3. And so we go all the way up until, so 2 times 3 will be 6 minus 1. And so we go all the way up here until we get to P. And 2 times P will be 2P minus 1. And so we get to 2P minus 1. And you've got to add up all of these terms. Okay, so now we get a little bit of trickiness here, because we have to figure out how we're going to add these. And we have a arithmetic sequence. Okay. So what we will then do is we will use the formula for the sum of an arithmetic sequence. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to ignore this last part, because it doesn't really matter too much what the 2p is. The main thing is that we've got a difference of 2. Okay, so the arithmetic sequence for the sum says that n over 2 is equal to, open brackets, 2a plus n minus 1 times the difference, right, d. Okay, this is a formula that you guys will be given in the sheet, but for a question like this, I think the main thing is just to for the Mathslit guys is just to probably I would say, what's the easiest way to do it? I would say, okay, so what you would do is you would replace the n with a p. So you're going to say p over 2. And then your A being the first letter of the alphabet is similar to, it's sort of stating what this is, right? A is your first term. Now your first term is 1. So then you say with 1 plus times your 2, right? So it's 2 times 1. 2 times 1 plus n minus 1. So n is going to be p now. So you replace your n with p. And then your difference is 2. Okay. And so if I was to times this out, I would get 2. Well, what you're going to actually do is when you times this in, your p times the 2 would cancel, and then times that terms the 2. So the 2's all cancel. And what you end up getting is p times 1, which is p. P times p, which is p squared. And then p times minus 1 is minus p. And so the p's go away. And so you end up getting p squared. Okay, now that is a tricky one. I have done that in the other video too. But yeah, the answer is p squared. Okay. Okay, now for this one, what we have is I want to check something quickly. I'm just going to pause this to see what number I went up to last time. Okay, so yeah, we're just going to do question 14 and then we will finish. Okay, so when you see x plus 1, I'm not going to tell you the theory behind this. As I said, if you want that, check out the other video on Smart Prep YouTube channel. I'll put a link in. If you see plus 1, what I want you to do is replace the x with a minus 1. And so then you write 2 negative 1 times 4 minus k negative 1 squared. Okay, so what am I saying? I'm saying that when you have plus 1, you take all of your x's and you put a plus 1, a minus 1 in. Okay, that's going to be your first equation, bx. Okay, and you get minus 3. So you replace this part with a minus 3. Okay, so what I'm saying is you replace the minus 3 into there. So you get negative 3 equals, and I'm going to simplify this, negative 1 to the power of 4 is 1. So it'll be 2. And then that is 1 as well. So minus k plus bx. Okay. And when it's divided by negative 1, the remainder is 5. Let's do a different color. And so what you do here is you say then you replace the fx with a 5, right? So we'll start with, but what we're saying is replace everything with a 5. Okay, well, we're going to run out of space, so let's do it down here. So I'm going to say f to the 1 is equal to 2, and then I replace everything here with a 1. Okay, so 1 to the 4 minus. Okay, let's just do, I'm just going to do this one in purple. Yeah, just so that you can see the different equations. So f to the 1 is equal to 2 to the 1 to the 4 minus k 1 squared plus b to the 1. Now this one is 5. So I say 5 equals 2 minus k plus b. And what I have now is two equations, which I can then use to solve. I want the value of k. Okay, when I replace this, I had to replace this x with a 1 in respect. So that ends up being -1. Because if I replace this here with a -1, it'll be negative b. Okay. And so what I want to do is I want to solve for k. Well, if I add these two equations together, that one and that one, I will end up being able to solve for k. Let's see how. Negative b plus b gives you 0. Negative k plus negative k is minus 2k. 2 plus 2 is 4. Negative 3 plus 5 is 2. Take the 4 across, I get minus 4. Minus 4 plus 2 is minus 2 equals minus 2k. So k must equal 1. So the answer is B. Okay, thank you very much for watching. What I'm going to do is I'm going to carry on recording. And what I will do is I will release the rest of these videos on this channel when I reach 1,000 subscribers. If you do not want to wait, head over to the Smart Prep website where you can get all of the recordings and all the videos and everything that we've done, Senzo and I, immediately. And there's printable past papers that you can download. And as I said, all of these questions, if you do them all, you are going to do very, very well in your NBTs, because a lot of the comments have said the questions that we asked were exactly as they saw in the exam. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you soon.